Thanks everyone for being on the panel. We'll dive straight into it. I think we've heard different shades of the definition of responsibility since the morning. But what does responsibility mean for you? What does responsibility mean for a buyer company? Is that conversation live within the organization? So maybe rapidly going into this, could I take perspectives first, starting from you, Shashi, and then
So for us, we are majorly into the bearing industry. We manufacture industrial bearing as well as automotive. And our vision itself says, together we reimagine rotation for a better tomorrow, where sustainability is integrated into the DNA of our business. We also have a target of achieving net zero by 2050 and decarbonizing our operations by 2030. So the major lever for us is, sourcing RE. That's one of the major lever for us because our scope 1 emissions is almost 80%. And our scope 2 is 80%, scope 1 is 20%. So we do this by, rooftop solar, third-party long-term power purchase agreements and also virtual power purchase agreements. And having said that, we've already, already sourcing more than 98% of RE. And at SKF, we have something called as SKF Care Framework. So SKF Care Framework is nothing but it prioritizes 4 areas: environment care, employee care, business care, and community care. And it is integrated into the way we offer our products to our customers and the way we do our business. So for us, today, procuring RE, it's not just about volume, the quantity, but also the quality. How are we doing it? And having said that, customers today are also asking for full value chain disclosure. Suzlon is here, they are one of our customers. And it becomes important what we are disclosing and how are we assessing our suppliers as well. And the second part is how do we, integrate risk mitigation into our procurement process, into our procurement decision-making process. So when I say decision-making process and the risk, there are 4 types of risk that I will talk about. One is the contractual risk management. How do we build safeguards into our PPAs in order to have that reliability and predictability with respect to building protection against changing laws, grid curtailments and the evolving banking policies, and also ensuring that the developer is giving us the project on time and guaranteeing that kind of performance. That is first risk that we want to mitigate. Second is definitely we've all heard about community and environmental safeguards. So we do ask our developers also to share the environmental and social impact assessment reports so that we know if there are any red flags. And we don't operate in ecologically sensitive zone or any conflict related areas. We don't do that. That's the second risk we want to mitigate. The third is how do we ensure transparency and governance. So when I say transparency, it's not only the project, but also extending it up to the upstream supply chain. We heard about that, right? How our developers are procuring their turbines or panels. And at the same time, how are they having meaningful conversation with the community so that that long-term trust is there and we don't face any disruptions. And lastly, no-brainer is having a financial safeguard, right? If we see some if we go with a non-responsible procurement practice, we'll have some hidden cost, maybe some compensation claim that will come on us or some reclamation claim. And the most important part is if there is any non-violation, during the project tenure, definitely we'll have a stranded assets. And I think that's all, if I have to summarize it, is how we look at responsibility.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shashi. Brajesh, while you speak about what responsibility means for you, can you also reflect on why is it becoming more important for you today?
Thank you, Atul. Though this RE value chain is rapidly growing and we have seen a lot of challenges, social challenges and environmental challenges are coming on the way. And to tackle those challenges, the responsible procurement is very important. So in H&M, through the sustainability domain, we are helping our business partner, not only helping, influencing them to go for the responsible procurements, whether it's going for the open access or PPA or going for their own installation of the solar and wind parks. So we are helping them for the scrutiny of all the projects, even helping in drafting the PPA agreements as well as the connection technical and the financial as well as the responsible procurement connection. You can say the ESG parameter evaluation of all those installation. We help them, our business partner. And also that is very important for us because that is the big tool for de-risking our supply chain. Because 80% of our emissions are coming from our supply chain, value chain, and that's why that is very important for us to de-risking that one, that is the related to reputational as well as our product risk also involved in that. And also through this, we can I'll give you the example, the successful installation example here. Tamil Nadu, we have installed one solar park, help our supplier to install solar park. And through that, we have followed the ESG requirements from the inception, from the planning of the project till the delivery of and the transmission of power. And through that, they can very good in the quality of power, reliability and traceability of their electricity. And also, that is the stronger resilience of the long-term supply, and also very conscious for that one. That is very important. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I think a couple of things that I've noted over here. One, of course, Shashi, something that you've underlined quite strongly is to suggest that while it is important to move towards clean energy, and of course that's an imperative that companies are chasing, the how is the clean energy produced also becomes quite important for companies as well, right? We'll move to the next question. I think it's important for us to understand where do we begin the conversation, or where do we start embedding the conversation around responsibility, right? I think there's a 5-stage cycle which Nidhi spoke to as part of the toolkit as well. There are different stages of that. There's always this sense, where do we begin, right? And what's the right time for us to start speaking about it, accounting the risk associated with, with supply chains and things like that. So, Umit, would you be able to speak to how JLL thinks about embedding risks, and what, in your mind, would be the right stage for us to be talking about it?
Thank you, Atul. Before I answer your question, it is important for the audience to know, because my co-panelists, they represent industry, manufacturing setup, whereas I represent JLL, which is a real estate professional services firm. And in the spectrum of real estate, we touch upon everything except playing the role of a developer, which is constructing a building. So when we touch that entire spectrum, and I represent the sustainability consulting practice. So I curate customized strategies, sustainability strategies for our clients who may be struggling to navigate their agenda, their commitments. And I'll take couple of examples here to explain, Atul. When you talk about where does responsibility sits, first and foremost, every organization, like how we define the risk appetite for ourselves, for our organization, it is important to define the appetite of responsibility. So definition of what responsibility means to you in this parlance is very important. From my experience, I've seen a larger portion of our clients, if I were to break, was 90% are occupier clients who are global organizations present in lease spaces in India and across as well, for that matter. And these clients do not have the need, so to say, and I must compliment you rather on thinking of a responsible RE procurement and coming up with such an amazing compass. I'm definitely going to use that. They're not concerned. So they would deploy somebody like a JLL then to identify the risk, ensure that all the risks are mitigated. There are measures appropriately captured at every stage. It is not that you can define it at any one stage. It has to start at the beginning, and then there has to be a continuous governance embedded throughout the life cycle of a real estate for that. And when I say it has to be set at the intent, I mean, if I were to anchor it, I would say set it at the intent, embedded it in procurement, and validate it in your operations. So touching every cycle and ensuring that you also have the definition, the intent, the right practices embedded in terms of your material procurement and everything, the partners that you're getting associated to procure the energy, and then validating it, having some third-party audits included in that as well.
Before I head to Suzlon to take the developer's view on responsibility and what's the conversation looking like with buyers, Shashi, any quick thoughts on where do you see as an organization where responsibility needs to be embedded in terms of the state cycles that we have?
I think first step is to integrate it into the procurement process. Like when I say integration, it's actually the ESG criterias into the procurement decision making. Otherwise, what happens is we'll always give contracts to whoever is L1. So, to break that, it's important to make them aware that ESG criteria are non-negotiable. That's the first step for me. Okay. Then I think if you ask me, it's screening. So once I have the criteria set, I have everything with me to choose the right partner, and also what kind of risk appetite I have, what kind of project I want to get into. And if I get a right partner who has, who demonstrates ethical practices, responsible land practice, and also strong ESG performance or a governance, I think I'm mitigating half of my downstream risk. So for me, I think screening becomes very important. And when we do screening, we also look into, how are they adhering to our code of conduct, which is again an elaborative list integrating the ESG criteria that I mentioned, what kind of safety measures they have, grievance redressal mechanisms, and also like I mentioned, ESIA becomes a non-negotiable. So I think, and definitely you have to embed it into all the phases, right? Planning, contractual, and monitoring, and end of life. I will just touch upon the end of life phase because I think rest all is very self-explanatory. Earlier, we never used to think about, what happens at the end of life, what happens to the turbine, what happens to the panel. But right now, I think the asset decommissioning and circularity becomes very important because today there are technologies that will help in recycling the wind turbine blades as well. In my previous organization, Aditya Birla Group, we had something called as recyclamine, which is actually breaking down the epoxies into composite, the turbine blade, and again reusing it for the fiber for making the turbine blade. And at SKF, we have an excellent circular solution called remanufacturing, where the bearings which are used in the turbine or in the turbine specifically can be refurbished so that the life can be extended and you don't dispose it off at an early stage. And already we are doing it for one of our wind customers. That was a pilot trial and it succeeded. So we can only do it for large size bearings. So that is one of the circular solution that we have. And Nishtha is smiling here. I've been telling her that how you can do remanufacturing, use SKF, and use it for your own products. So yeah, thanks.
So I think on that, it seems like one thing is quite strong and resonating as well. I mean, the conversation on responsibility, at least in businesses, companies, needs to be more intentional and needs to be across all stages, right? And needs to be thought early on. Nishtha, over to you. Is there a conversation or is there something that's coming from the buyers to you to say, well, this is what we need from you, and what's your experience on some of those conversations been so far?
So to all who know about Suzlon, we are there into a very unique setup. We are there into manufacturing. We set up the projects. We get into OMS, and we are also suppliers as well as we have suppliers like SKF sitting next to us. So it's a very unique ecosystem. So what we do in this business is a very different thing. And before I get on to your question, how we work in sustainability, we've got 3 pillars. We are working in organizational, product, and value chain sustainability. And when I say that, we have got equal weightage to all the pillars. So which precisely means that what you see as my wind turbine, how sustainable it could be, not just for now, but later for the future, when it ends in the end of life, 25 years, once it approaches, what's going to happen after that. So that's what we are working on. When you talk about supply chain, we are very particular about it because in our business, if you look at it, the scope 1 and scope 2 hardly play a role. We already have renewable integrated. We are getting into renewable business and we are using renewables. So when you talk about our scope 3 emissions, it's more than 95%. Now, how do we get into that? So I think that's where when Shashi spoke about our 7 pillars, because she knows that how my team works. So let me give you deep insights of what we are working on and how we see it coming in from the buyers as well. We've got something called 7-pillar methodology on sustainable assessment. When you talk about sustainable procurement, how well we are performing. There are 2 ways. We are trying to assess in the very beginning whenever we are inducting a new supplier, not just having an induction and then doing a monitoring. And there is a pillar called risk, well-defined pillar called risk, which takes into consideration geographical commodity risk as well. We are also working towards human right risk assessment and a lot of things when you talk about, not just a touch upon elements, but on a deep dive part of it. So on that part, we are seeing how well our suppliers are performing well over a period of time overall, and particularly if it is a risk to the business, then we are mindful about what is the next business decision. Now coming on to your question, whether there is a ask coming in from the buyers. So when we talk on over there, I don't think so, honestly speaking, because it's very fragmented approach. So how it is coming up is, are you doing something on ESG, or there is a detailed mechanism, how well you're performing on BRSR, or SR report is there. But what we are doing is beyond that. So our vision has always been powering a greener tomorrow, and we are there till the last 3 decades. The vision has always been the same, which was there earlier. So what we are doing over here, when you talk about our business, is starting from when we plan a project. This is the area wherein when you talk about your model, where the land will be there. Is there something that we see in the land acquisition, any risk is there? Aligning, I would say, on a model towards IFC performance standard, that's what we are working on the business model. Getting onto community engagement, even then a land part of it, is it on a willing buyer, willing seller basis? Is it on a willing lessor, willing lessee basis? That's what we are working on. Stakeholder engagement, taking the consensus of the community. After the community engagement, building it up into the decision making, working for the community, and working with, if at all there is any tribals or things like that. So that way we are working on from the planning stage. Now getting on to the next stage, we are talking about environmental and social due diligence, and we are very happy to share this even right now that, whenever any customer asks, or even ourselves, we talk about what exactly product we are selling you, what is the sustainability dimension to it, so that they understand, the deep dive of what exactly they are procuring from us. Even on the process when we talk about that, what we are doing on the environmental and social due diligence, so that they should be aware of what they are procuring. So without this as well, what you said, we are already providing these insights. Now getting on to the next one, when you talk about, we are already working on biodiversity risk management. We are seeing to it whether there are IBAs, KBAs, not just on whether it is on 10-kilometer ecologically sensitive areas, we are working on IBAs, KBAs as well. So that's something that we are working on already. Now what's happening over here is that a lot of mature customers, which are sitting overseas or, which have been asked from the investors, they have been asking whether there is something, and they're quite impressed because we have been doing by ourselves, and we are providing all these insights to them that what we are working in this model. So starting from your planning to your land, to your community, to your biodiversity, and one more insight that I would like to know that we are providing to our customers and to the investor world and to the world outside is that when you talk about community, there's a lot of integration that we can talk on, not just on the risk management, not just on the CSR activities. There's something on the circularity that we are already working on. We are talking about circularity, the end of the blade. When we talk about the blade, it could be coming up from the blade inventory from the manufacturing or from the decommissioning part of it. So we are using it to make ample number of things, either in the CSR part of it or making it boats or a lot of things. The last thing that I would like to highlight over here is that what exactly is happening on the circularity. We are even working on the discarded batteries from the OMS, which is not useful for the turbine, and getting it into repurpose for the solar UPS. And that's what we are providing to community, and that project has been a success story for the last 1 decade. So that's on the circularity aspect when we talk about end of life and it's end to end. So yeah, the work is on. Thank you.
Thanks, interesting. Just on some of this. I think the message there from what you said is, one is, it seems like there is maturity within the, I would say, RE developer ecosystem to respond to some of these demands if they were to come. What you're sensing is that demand isn't clear at the moment or isn't coming, so to say, from the buyers.
I would say the understanding itself is not clear.
Yeah, and hopefully with some of the work that's happening to the Responsible Energy Initiative, the Buyers Toolkit, I think we are also kind of arming, that's a wrong word in the space that we are, to say arming, but yeah, enabling the companies to do it, right? So we'll go to the last 2 questions quickly. I think, of course, the elephant in the room is being, what does this all come at? What's the cost of embedding responsibility into what we do. So thoughts from you, Umit, and then I'll go to Shashi.
I'll keep it very quick. And no one said sustainability comes cheap. It does come at a cost, but one needs to look at the ROI. The initial upfront cost may be higher, but the benefits that you reap in the future, the lower operational cost for us, it is also the stickiness with the tenants and a longevity in the occupier's mind to stick with the same developer or landlord if he's offering renewable energy and in a responsible manner. There are so many other benefits, like insurance premium goes down, the assets, the value of the assets also rises, so on and so forth. So all those benefits added up, initial upfront cost is higher, and that is where one needs to see the cost benefit analysis and then come up with what's best for them.
Fair enough. Shashi, quick thoughts on that?
For us, I mean, irrespective of the favorable commercial terms, we would eliminate suppliers who have, all these cases of bribery or whatever unethical practices, so we will not take them into the screening. In the first round itself, they will get eliminated. But in the second round, we will have, we'll compare the commercial as well as the ESG parameters. Like I said, the criteria is that, and if they're having a strong performance, there will be we'll evaluate the supplier based on a fair scoring weightage, where 60 to 70% is commercial and 30 to 40% is ESG. So I think it helps in safeguarding your commercial viability when you integrate, sustainable procurement practice. So I think that's what we've adopting. And then I just want to touch upon one point when, from the responsible perspective is, in SKF, we also have a target on localization. Like right now we are sitting, like we import a lot of bearings from, from our external, outside factories, and also some of our material from China. So we have taken a target that by 2027, we'll be 70% localized. Today we are at 58, 57%. So in responsible procurement, where do developers see that localization? I think that also something they need to look into. How do we make products in India, procure it in India? And that can be one criteria which going forward, we might want to add it into our, procurement process. What is the localization target that the developers are looking at? So I would leave it at that.
Fair enough. Thanks so much. The final question to all of you, and this is going to be a rapid one. Maybe I can start with Nishtha, you, and then go to Brajesh. But if there's one thing that you would want to see change so that we can accelerate this conversation on responsible procurement, what would that be, Nishtha?
I think quickly, if at all I have to summarize this one, it would be more about understanding and what she said already, the ROI perspective, that it has got a long-term value addition, and not looking from a perspective that only regulations can change the entire dynamics. So it has to be considered a value addition for a later purpose, not now that it is going to give you immediate returns. If that happens, nothing like that.
As per me, as RE is the game changer for the decarbonization, and the corporates are taking it very seriously, and it's rapidly growing all over the world. And India, we blessed with the opportunity, enormous opportunity of RE available here. So corporate need to reset their procurement consciously from the transactional approach to a system-based approach. It will help for the responsible procurement and solve the ESG issues happening in the RE value chain.
Great, thank you. Shashi, Umit?
So I think for me, it will be transparency. Like what kind of policy interventions can we have to ensure that developers demonstrate they have ethical practice and transparency? So how do we look at traceability of the value chain? How do we look at implementing community consent? We already saw that, right? So how do we get that? And aligning the financial incentives, whatever government incentives are that, with the ethical practice is something which will help in bringing up transparency. And lastly, we all have, as a first step, we have BRSR, disclosing the value chain, reporting on the value chain disclosure. So as a first step, all matured organizations can start looking at that disclosure voluntarily. And lastly, adoption of the newly released toolkit. I think that is the next guiding step and a direction for all of us, and very good that we can adopt it. And it also gives us a level playing field, right? We know what are the definitions and everyone is there, so we can use that, so I think.
So just one add-on I would like to add, put in over here. Like everybody is committed to net zero, voluntarily or involuntarily, right? As a nation as well, we have got a commitment. Now think about that if at all you're not able to have even renewables to get onto your scope 2 reduction, what are we talking about? Yeah. So getting on to the next one on scope 3 reduction, which is outside your control, just think about what is in control. So I think it's high time that we realize that what's in control, work on it now, instead of talking about how can we reduce scope 3 emissions. So that would be one thought.
Umit, final thoughts?
Sticking to the question of how do we accelerate responsible renewable energy procurement, it might differ for service industry, where scope 3 is more than 95% of your 1, 2, and 3 put together, and more relevant for manufacturing industries where scope 2 and scope 1 are significantly higher. In my view, it can be accelerated only if it becomes as a criteria, as a part of the framework, such as RE100 and something. If it is there as a criteria, people will definitely adopt it, followed by the regulations, the regulatory intervention.
Great, that's a positive note to finish up. I've also gotten a cue card saying time up. So, well, no, I think this is great. Thanks for your perspective. I know this was quick, fast, but we were able to have pretty much cover all the spectrum and the spectrum of the conversations. But I think the final thought from my side is, how do we kind of start now moving from ambition, intention, to really kind of making sure that this is a consistent practice across the value chain. Thanks so much, everyone.